Man, I love an opportunity to make a new friend, and the gentleman that I'm speaking to in this conversation today has just become, in my opinion, a new friend. Teague Parker was introduced to me by his mother, Brett, and what Teague is doing with his take on wellness through improv is so just beautiful and inspiring to me that we are looking at wellness in so many different ways now that it's inspiring to just see where else wellness can take. So in this conversation today, Teague and I talk a lot about his improv career that he's got, the production companies that he holds, the improv for wellness company that he started, and just a lot of the reasoning and the philosophy behind what he does and why he does it. And I think, a lot of what he's talking about transfers through life wholeheartedly and very passionately. So I'm really inspired by this conversation. Very looking forward to seeing where this information that we talk about takes myself, and seeing how it continues to carry Teague and the passion and the desire and the drive that he has. So really excited for you to hear this conversation, and I hope you get something out of it. All right, welcome back to our show. Today, sitting across from me is a new friend. So this was actually my first face-to-face meeting with you. We've communicated a lot through Instagram, social media, things like that. I'm lucky enough to be a friend of your mother's, and who's a fucking amazing woman. I adore Brett Parker so much. Had her on the podcast a few weeks back. So sitting across from me today is Teague Parker. Teague is a freelance teaching artist. He is the creator of Improv for Wellness. He's an improv, an actor, playwright, producer, just many hats that this gentleman wears, as well as the owner and founder of Come Up Productions. So I am so excited to talk to Teague today. One about just I've been really interested in flow state recently. We were talking about this downstairs a little bit, and things come across your path in the right way, right? We were talking about that downstairs, saying yes to things and just embracing the knowledge that comes in. And so, in my preparation for our interview, I'm reading this book called The Art of the Impossible by Stephen Coulter, and the chapter I read yesterday was talking about improv acting, improv comedy, and flow state. I'm like, of course it is.
Right.
Of course it is.
It always comes together like that.
It's like right here in front of me. It's like, hey, here's this silver platter of shit to talk about now in your interview tomorrow. I'm like, thanks, universe. Appreciate that.
It always provides.
Definitely. So, dude, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. It's getting to listen to some of the podcasts before. It's just it's nice just to talk. It's nice just to connect and to share the wisdom that people just have inherently. Like, people train, they practice, they do all this stuff, but everybody has like lessons that only they can hold to.
Yes. And that, we get to this a little bit later, but I've been embracing this concept of the word gnosis lately. It's Gnosis, and it's this intrinsic knowledge that we don't know why we have it or how we got it, but we just know it, and it's like this internal deep knowing of just like this confidence of just like knowledge of self almost, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I know this information, don't know how I got it, don't know why I know it, don't know how to explain it to you so that you can know it, but I also don't really care. Yeah. Because I know it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I think the shame is that so much of like culture and society gets us to think we don't know it. Like, it moves us away from trusting the base impulses that we have or the knowledge that we have and being like, well, I didn't study all this stuff. I didn't practice this for years. I didn't come with whatever background that people think they need to have to trust, like, no, you have lessons.
Yes.
And if you step into it, we can expand that human spectrum of knowledge, so to speak.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. I wholeheartedly agree. And it took me a while to get to the point to be in a place where I can trust that. Can I trust that knowledge and that gnosis and that intuition? I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but growing up in the South, it was a very masculine dominated area. And it was, it was kind of counterintuitive because as a male, we're always told to trust your gut, trust your gut.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was taught that intuition outside of trusting your gut, like if you had clairs, right, the clairvoyance, clairsight, clairaudience, things like that, that was witchery kind of stuff, right? And
Oof.
that was like very feminine based and shouldn't be observed, shouldn't be looked at, and should be ignored because that's shit that we can't explain, so we don't want to look at that, you know. And so, you know, in a way, we've got a lot of atrophied muscles because we haven't been practicing and working out that intuition for a lot of us, you know. And so it's kind of nice to have, you know, conversational practice in that practice of, you know, say lifting that weight of intuition again, you know, because through conversation, if you're having a true conversation with a human being across from you and you're honestly letting them like flush out their full thought,
Yeah.
and you're not just tying yourself to one sentence that they might have said, the first sentence in a five minute long diatribe, right? That first thing they said you've tied onto, and now you're waiting for your spot so you can just retort, but you've lost everything that they've said after that first minute, right?
Yeah.
So when you can have that honest conversation and let that person hold the space for that person while they're speaking, there's so much knowledge that can be gained from that space holding that we don't even realize. I think, again, it's that gnosis, right? We don't even know how much knowledge our subconscious is taking in, or we're consciously taking in, until we stop and pay attention.
Yeah. And even just letting yourself be surprised by, even if you can kind of guess like, oh, this person's going to this idea as they're talking, you can be surprised by how they get there, how they speak on that particular thing. This last year, I read the book "The Art of Listening" by Julia Cameron.
Okay.
And I used to think, because of the improv background, like I can listen so intently that I can finish someone's thought for them, and so it felt to me like I was connecting with somebody by doing that. By when they go like, I'll finish the sentence for them.
Yep.
But what the book helped me see was like, let someone get to their final thought first. Let somebody finish the whole thing so that you can be surprised. And even if you know what's going to come out, you can connect with the person and see that beautiful journey of what did it look like for them to get there? Or were they surprised? And you get to be surprised too by like, oh, they didn't say what I thought they would say. Or they didn't get to the thing that I thought they should say. It actually took to a whole different direction and just allow discovery, allow surprises to happen.
I love that, man. There was I fortunately and unfortunately, I learned that at a younger age. I think in my early 20s. I was working at a billiards club down in Seattle, and there was a gentleman that used to refelt the pool tables named Rich. Amazing gentleman. He was probably in his 70s when I met him first. He was an old pool pro. You know, he's just trick shots, all this stuff. But I never had a conversation with him. I just always watched him play and refelt the tables. And so I saw him in there one day, and I went over to chat with him, just, you know, shooting the shit. We were slow. And that's when I realized he had a stutter. And it was a pretty strong stutter. And again, I was like 23, 24 at the time. So I was pretty young in my knowledge of bass. And in my first conversation with him, I can't remember what he was trying to say, but he got to a point to where he was stuttering, and I knew what he was trying to say. He was trying to say table. We were talking about pool tables. Yeah. And so while he was stuttering through the word table, I finished the word for him. I was like, oh, table. I got it. And he looked at me like, motherfucker, that's my word to say. I know what I'm saying. Let me get it out. He didn't even have to say it. Just the look he gave me was like, got it. Understood. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I did not mean to offend you. And from that moment on, like, I try very, very consciously to do exactly what you just said. Try to let that person finish their sentence, finish their thought process, because again, like, I might have an understanding of where they feel like they're going, but the surprise is so beautiful. It's like, I thought you were going to say table, but you said trunk. You're like, you're refelting a trunk? What the hell is that?
Whoa, wait a minute. Gosh. And like, just the beauty of like someone like that stepping into their power in that moment, where it could be this social conditioning of like, oh, they finished my word and like, I don't like that, but whatever, I'm just meeting them, let's be polite. But to be like, no, I don't like that. I'm going to put up this boundary now so it doesn't happen again, and no hard feelings. It's just we hit the boundary sooner than we may have expected.
Exactly. And to be completely frank, Rich and I had a beautiful relationship for another like 5 years after that while I was still at Jill's. and it's just a beautiful human being. And I hope, gosh, I hope he's still alive. He was pretty old whenever I knew him back then, but man, beautiful human being.
Yeah.
Love that guy. And it's those lessons that we never knew that we needed to be taught until we learned them. Right.
Yep.
I didn't know I was offending. And I can't tell you how many people I probably offended on the way finishing sentences,
Yeah.
And it's, we can't beat ourselves up for knowledge we didn't previously have.
Yep.
So I can't look back at my life and be like, oh my gosh, this person, that person. It's just, hey, from here going forward, this is my responsibility to own up to that conscious effort and that understanding that I have.
Yeah.
And to hold that space for people just to finish their thoughts.
Yeah, and to get to reflect on like, oh wow, I used to do that. I've grown from that, or oh, I understand why I did it back then. Like there's a lot of things that I had growing up because I grew up pretty. I don't want to say shy. I just didn't know what to say.
Okay.
I just didn't know what to say to people all the time. I remember being a little kid going to a therapy appointment, just being like, the therapist was trying to help me learn how to talk to people. He's like, well, and right now it astounds me that this happened. He's like, let's do a role play. Let's do an improv.
All right.
And he was like, I'm going to sit at this table and I'm going to be eating my food at lunch. And you just come in and you just talk to me. And in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm like 10 or something like that. And I've never done arts at that point.
Okay.
And so I'm just like, okay. And so he just starts acting like he's eating a sandwich. And I'm there and I go like, hi. He goes like, hello. And he keeps eating the sandwich and I go like, how are you doing? He was like, I'm doing good. And I just remember it was so stressful at that moment. It was probably like 10 to 30 seconds of silence, but it felt like 5 minutes to me. Where I was like, I wish I knew what to say. I wish I knew how to follow up. I wish I knew what do you do in this moment. But it just kept on going like that. And, we talked about stuff after that, I'm sure, but that's what I remember from that moment. And wanting to discover and find the ways to like, how do I interact with people? Because I want to connect with people.
Yeah.
I want to build those relationships, but my mind just goes blank with what do I have to share? I think we lose kind of like our ideas of our self-worth when we're communicating with other people early on, of like, I don't know what makes me worthy, and if I talk about something, I don't know if you'll like that, and just all these self-conscious thoughts that get in the way and stop you from trusting, like, whatever you say is what you say, and whatever you learn from reflecting on these moments and such, you can take that in these times now, like reflecting on like, oh, if you used to finish people's sentences and stuff like that.
Right.
We can carry that forward and say, oh, I appreciate that about my old self. I love that about my old self, that I didn't know how to do that, and now I do. There's this whole journey in between.
Yeah.
But we have to honor those parts of ourselves.
Yes, we do, because you don't know what you're doing wrong until you know.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I talk a lot about the rites of passages that we used to have, right? Whether it's like tribal rites of passages where you hit a certain age and then you have like a lot of tribes, you would say have vision quests, right? You go out into the desert for 2 weeks, you have water and you live off the land, and then you come back with these messages and from the gods and things like that. Some involve like plant medicines, whatever it was, but modernizing what these rites of passages might be now, right? But I think one of the things that we miss a lot on, especially now in our digital age, is the art of conversation.
Yeah.
And so to hear you going through that kind of conversational therapy at a young age, that's so beautiful for me to hear, because one, like, yes, you're learning how to conversate, but I think the underlying message too might be that feeling what it feels like to not have a reciprocal conversation. Like like when you ask somebody a question, having them just say yes or no, but not giving you a leading answer so that they can continue the conversation, or you could, right?
Yep.
Because, I find that a lot with my kids, right?
Oh,
like with my kids, they're sitting down, hey, what you doing? You doing homework? all they can say is yes or no, right? There's no really a continuation of the conversation. So they say yes, and they go back to doing their thing, and then I'm like, well, okay, what are you doing, right? And then I get that tone to my voice, and then they get their tone, be like, I'm fucking doing my math, you know?
Right.
So, having that trained conversational, understanding of, okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, and even if you don't answer it in a leading way, I can now retort in a leading way to lead that answer back into you questioning something that I'm doing, and then we can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a lot of that now. We send texts and we put our phone down, or we send an email and then we put our phone down. Make some fucking stupid video and put our phone down.
Right.
That real time active conversation. Unless you're in like a debate class or you're an active participant in your classroom settings, there's not a lot of good opportunities for real time conversations to happen.
Yeah.
So I love that, that was something that you experienced at a young age.
Yeah, and I think there's not as many opportunities, and I don't think people grow up knowing that everyone's terrified. Like everybody, especially in elementary school, middle school, high school, they're really afraid of how to socialize,
Right.
of how to get into a group, of how to make friends. And so somebody that's doing it quote unquote well looks like they're thriving to everyone else when they're just as terrified. They may not be an actually good communicator.
Right.
It just so happened that the way that they spoke connected with other people. So then you talk with those people and they don't retort back with you, and you're like, well, I'm going to learn how to ask more questions. I'm going to learn how to yes and anybody's statements and things like that. But if no one gives you anything, there's only so much you can do, and you can walk away going like, oh, okay, they're on their journey, and I'm looking for people that may be on a certain step alongside me in the journey. But when you grow up, you don't know any of that stuff.
Right.
You just assume like, oh, I'm bad at it.
Right.
I'm the one that can't do it.
And it's funny how, not funny, it's actually really sad how long we hold on to that story of ourselves. And and I would say 90% of the stories we tell ourselves are completely false. They're grandized, they're demonstrative, they're just so negatory at times. But we don't even realize how ingrained we are in that story until, like, as a Reiki practitioner, I have a lot of clients that come through that have that similar, okay, what's going on? What's your intention? And they start going through these litany of things that as they're talking about it, you can tell that these are not, I know these people, right? Now I've worked with them a few times, like I know these people and I know that is not who they are, but that's who they believe they are. Whether they've been told that or they've experienced that in their past, but that groove of that story inside their brain is so deep that they can't change the record to a different groove.
Yeah.
Right? That needle is so deep in there that you got to sometimes, like, that's why I love sound healing and energy healing, because you can shake that needle out and you can change the groove of that record into a new track and say, you're writing your new story now. Right? That old story is there. You got to not pay attention to that anymore. Let's drive this new story in. This story of self-worth, this story of understanding of my emotions are okay to embrace. I'm a vulnerable human being that is going to be upset, is going to be happy, is going to be sad, and all those emotions are beautiful to embrace. Right? When we start to like push away emotions, that's when that needle, that groove gets deeper. Because it's like, no, we're not done with this yet. We're going to stay in here. Right? Deal with that shit, and then change that, So it's a communicative struggle right now, I believe.
I completely agree. And, I love the image of the groove getting stuck, right? And in a lot of my work with the Improv for Wellness, there's a lot of the terms that I've learned through things like Julia Cameron and Twyla Tharp, who's a ballet dancer that wrote the book The Creative Habit and stuff. A lot of them talk about reclaiming your identity. There's no new thing to create. There's only something to reclaim. There's something that was yours that somebody manipulated, or it just got off course to be like telling a story, like you said, that isn't your true story. So with some of the work that I hope to do, right, or that I try to do, is like showing people, if you get back to your base impulses, it'll teach you who you are. And you don't have to figure out like, what am I trying to be? What is all of these pieces that I'm trying to piece together? It's like, well, just look at what's there. And if we don't judge it, we can say like, oh, this is what comes up naturally for me, and I wish that, maybe I read more or maybe I drew more or something like that. But now we have the foundation so that we can include those parts on top of it, rather than being like, oh, like I don't know, I don't like this part about myself that is my nature. Let's learn to be like, well, let's just love it, because your body can't tell the difference of what is okay in its truth and what is not. But if we take the time to be like, separate that, say everything's worthy, we don't even have to worry about it anymore.
That is, I love that so much. I personally, my journey. So I've gone from a corporate life to a more I don't know, we'll call it freedom life, but non-corporatized. Just
Totally.
Working for myself.
Yeah.
And corporate Adam held a lot of skills, right? Corporate Adam raised a family. Corporate Adam, made enough money to buy a house. All these things, right? Corporate Adam was a very structured human being, but unhappy at the same time. So as I started to shift into this new mentality that I'm trying to embrace. At first, I was just like, get out of here, corporate Adam. Here's a big foot to the ass. I don't want you anymore. None of your skills, none of your mentalities. Get the F away from me. And he wasn't going anywhere. He was like, nah. Every time I tried to push him away, he would come pleading back and be like, no, this is why you need me. This is my protection I offer. This is all the things that I do. This is the reason why you need me around.
Yeah.
I'm like, nah, man, get away. And it wasn't until I finally sent this part of my body immense amounts of love, respect, appreciation, crying, thank you for the person that you were, the person that you've made me.
Yeah.
I embrace the good that you have, but I cannot let you drive the bus anymore. And it was that moment of appreciation, showing the love of this person for getting me to that point, that personality finally started to release and said, okay, I trust now that this new personality is going to take the reins and do us proud, but I'm still here if you need me.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like corporate Adam has a lot of cool skills, man. Corporate Adam did a lot of good things. He built some teams. He taught me how to value humanity and not just see him as a business dollar sign, right? You see him as a person, as a human being. And as you recognize a person as a being and not a dollar sign, that connection that you make with that person creates this bond that you will do anything for them as they will do anything for you. Whether you're their boss, you're their coworker, whatever you want to call it, but you've created a bond now, and that bond can't be broken because you see their humanity and they see you see their humanity. You're not just their fucking boss, right?
Yeah.
And so like those little lessons of just being an actual human being and not being the overarching boss or the, whatever you want to call it, it taught me so much about humans. And so I can't lose that. I can't let that go.
Yeah.
That was a big lesson in life that I can carry over to friends, family, raising kids, other coworkers that I might have in the future. So, those parts of our lives, they mean something.
Yeah. Why throw out the good parts of it, right?
Exactly.
And a lot of the language I like to use with this stuff is just being like, what's serving me, what's not serving me, and being able to be like, at some point, corporate Adam served us.
Yes.
College Teague served him a lot. He worked into midnight. He did as many extra opportunities as he could. He tried to work from a place of, I'm not as talented as everyone else, so I'm going to make sure no one works harder than me.
Okay.
That's great for that time, and there was a lot of amazing things that came from it, but kind of like it sounds like you've had for yourself, that doesn't serve me now.
Yeah.
I don't need to be that stressed. I don't need validation from someone saying, hey, you work the hardest out of all this.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't, I don't need it anymore, but that version of myself did.
Yeah.
And being able to, again, like you said, love ourselves and be like, I'm going to take all those best parts, and it can be in the bus. It can ride with us.
Yep.
But something else gets to take the reins is important, and I think people get lost in figuring out, well, who's going to drive.
Right. Yes, exactly. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the term. Yeah. Well, let's man, I want to hear more about improv for wellness.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, when I first heard about that, it made so much sense, but was also confusing to me at the same time. Like it's such a beautiful concept. So what spurred this idea for you?
Yeah, so I've been doing improv for 13 years now.
Okay.
I started in high school, and like a lot of people, I started by learning like, oh, whose line is it anyways?
Oh,
Like,
yeah, okay.
Look at that show. That's so fun. I watched it with my family. We enjoyed it. Very funny, over the top, all of that.
Totally.
And I didn't have like an arts background. I didn't have like a desire to be a performer or anything like that. But I saw the improv class at our high school, and I was like, oh, that seems like something I want to do, and did it, fell in love with it, just had a passion for it. And as you got to experience, and anybody that listens to the podcast, my mom is a fucking powerhouse.
God, she's a beast.
Yeah.
Fucking love Brett Parker. Man.
Yeah, Brett Parker is on another level. So what she did was she saw that I loved this.
Okay.
And I didn't have any other passions or anything. And she was like, well, you love this. So I researched a bunch of improv programs that are around Seattle and all that, and we'll drive to it. And there's an audition next week. So
Sounds just like your mom.
yes, yes, it is. And it's amazing because it's why I'm here doing what I do today.
Hell yeah,
because she believed in what I was doing, and my dad as well.
Yeah.
My mom she'll just take the reins, right?
She spearheads that shit, man. Oh yeah.
But so I ended up doing training at Jet City Improv down in Seattle. And I ended up loving it there, doing their program. And so I ended up volunteering there for multiple years. And for like a period of 2 years, I was just there from Thursday to Saturday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just volunteering. And since I volunteered, I got to see the shows for free.
Okay.
So I basically learned improv through the training and school and all of that, but also by just watching people that were amazing at it.
Very cool.
And trying to piece together, like, what do I like about this? Why do I not like that? Why does this land? Why does it not land?
Like self-taught almost.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, self-taught in those aspects, and then being able to directly apply it in these classes, in these programs, and all of that.
Wow.
So that's where it, like, kind of started for me. And, fast forward through college, through all these different things, I did improv all through college. I was on a team called the Dead Parrot Society, and the reason I went to Western Washington University in the first place was because they had the best team in the nation at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a class or anything. It was just a club.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's dope.
Yeah,
Very cool.
It was amazing. It was like, and again, it was something my mom found, so it was just like, oh, they're the best team in the nation. I was like, how is there a best team in the nation for improv?
Right, yeah.
It's not what you think about. So I wanted to go to Western purely for that. I was like, I'm going to get a degree in improv, and whatever the degree is whatever it is, right? But I found theater there, and I worked on acting and playwriting and found a balance between those two things.
Okay.
But I got to be an education director while I was there. I got to be an artistic director while I was doing that. And for 4 years straight, they had open rehearsals. They didn't have an audition process. They had this thing where you come every Tuesday from 8 to 10 p.m. and we all do improv together. And there's a performing ensemble, but there's just people that go for the fun of it and all of that.
Okay.
And so once you get on the team, you get to teach at those. So for 4 years, basically, because I got on probably like 3 months into my time there, I was just teaching.
Wow.
Yeah. And I never thought that it would be this thing that would grow inside of me, but it did. I loved getting to make people feel safe with improv because people generally don't.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah. It's this terrifying art form where the way I like to tell people, it's like it's extremely vulnerable because it's the closest that people will get to seeing how you think. If you're really embracing it that way, not holding off your impulses, not hesitating, and just being like, whatever, I'm right.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do.
That is. That's very confidence building. You got to have a lot of confidence in self, knowledge of self
Yeah.
to do that stuff.
Yeah.
Wow, I never put that together.
Yeah, and
Huh.
like the thing that was always interesting through like learning improv and training with it was that everybody's image is usually whose line is it anyways,
Right.
or is improv comedy or something in that vein. And I love that. That's what I did for a long time, but there was a lot of, I felt like through a lot of my acting training, there was a lot of philosophy within improv that's inherent to it that we weren't focusing on. We were so focused, it became a scary art form because there was a barometer of success. If they laugh, it went well.
Right.
If they didn't laugh, it didn't go well.
Okay.
And so that's the pressure that people come into with the art form most of the time of like, all right, people at work say I'm real funny and wacky, and now I got to prove that here, and I'm going to do that, and then already your body's tensing up.
Right.
Already your mind is racing. You didn't hear what somebody else just said.
Yep. You're trying to flush out your idea that you're working towards.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And it becomes a restrictive practice. Unless you do something like I did, which was just like, whatever, I'm going to brute force my way for years. And I don't want people to have to do that, you know? And so getting to teach for those years, I got to learn that a lot of the feedback I would get as an instructor was, hey, I love being in your room because you make it feel safe. Hey, you make it feel safe. Hey, you make it feel safe. And that, I think, planted the seed for like improv for wellness for me of like, how do you make it something that's easy that anybody wants to do, and actually it's the easiest thing to do in the world. Still can be scary, still can be nerve-wracking because you're building a muscle you haven't worked, but when you get to the higher ends of it, when you've put some time into it, let's get it away from the pressure and strain, because even in my improv community, I found that a lot of performers that were doing the thing, that were performing at theaters, that were making things happen, they still had a hard time dropping in.
Okay.
At least from, you know, that's purely me putting that on them, right? I don't know for sure. But I had a hard time connecting with a lot of people to do kind of like with the therapist, right? How was your day? It was great. And then it stops there, but they're an improviser.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Like, where am I going from here, man?
Right. So fast forward to going to, I went to a graduate program for a year. I ended up leaving because it wasn't the right fit for me.
Okay.
But I was doing some improv out there. I had a guy that I was really close friends with, who was a year above me in the program, and he was teaching the improv class. And he knew my background. He came to me like, hey, you know way more than me. Like, do you just want to come in and play with me and just do this?
Hell yeah.
And I did, and we got to play there. And then I had classmates in my cohort that were like, hey, we know you do improv. Like, would you teach me? I had somebody ask me to do one-on-one classes, which I had never done before, and did that with her, and then did stuff over the summer. And then I knew I was coming home, and I was like, I don't work well in the traditional 9 to 5.
Right.
I want to find something that lets me focus on what I care about, want to do art, and I want to teach this kind of stuff. And I think that's where the synthesis of like improv for wellness came from, of giving this art form in a way that will inherently make you a better performer, that will always go towards that route,
Right.
but is more focused and based in, let's learn to love ourselves more. Let's learn to care about who we are. Let's learn to trust our impulses and learn what does that actually mean, so that we can utilize that for everything and find these little openings throughout our life to be like, hey, you had that impulse to be like, man, I want to take that class, or man, I want to walk more, you know, and trust that. Whether you like it or not doesn't matter. Let's not judge the impulse. Let's just try it a little bit and see what it has to teach us from there.
Wow.
Yeah.
God, good for you, man.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. And so Okay, so that's a
That
beautiful.
was a lot of stuff.
Man, I'm just ingesting all that. That was gorgeous, man. One of my biggest passions right now is wellness. Human wellness, planetary wellness. And I always love the term "save the planet." Like
Yeah.
the planet's fine.
Right.
The planet's not going anywhere. We're the ones that need saving.
Yes.
Save humanity.
You're the first person I've heard actually say that, but I completely agree with that. Like, we're the ones that are going to die.
Yeah. Earth's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
It'll go through its rotation. It'll be fine. But how can we help humanity, right? That energetic healing. We find ways to get into our bodies, whether it's through some physical activity, like running, yoga, lifting weights, all that stuff. But but improv was one of the things that like I'd never even crossed my mind as a way to get inside your body.
Yeah.
And so once you planted that seed of doing what you do, and then I found you through your mom, that started a whole new noodling for me, and just a whole nother way to look at how to embrace your authentic humanity through an abstract form like improv.
Yeah.
Because the confidence that you need to be able to improv your life is so deep. It's like a jazz musician, right? Improv
Yes.
jazz, right?
Yes.
You can listen to like an old John Coltrane album where he's doing improv jazz, and it sounds like a train wreck, right? Like the drums don't match up, the saxophone doesn't match up, the bass doesn't match up the guitar, but it's all beautiful in its own way, and it's making music, and obviously people are buying it because it's on vinyl somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But as chaotic as that sounds, you have to be so confident and structured and understanding of the talents that you hold to be able to play with that knowledge so freely. And that's, I think, what finally connected the dots between improv and the wellness that you're doing was when I was listening to jazz, and I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense now, because the confidence you have to hold as a human to be able to have that real time in person in front of an audience, acting with no script, just going off of what somebody just fed you, man, there's a confidence that's a hard confidence to find, and when you have that knowledge of self and that confidence, what else can that breed?
Yeah. And and what I think is beautiful about that stuff is that even with like Coltrane, right? No matter what happens, the beauty of something like that is when you hear it, it's him.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like, it doesn't have to be good anymore because it's this pure expression of somebody that took the time to learn this thing that mattered to them and put it out into the world, hopefully for just the sake that they wanted to express themselves through this medium.
Yeah.
Because what I've found a lot in improv and just, theater and all of that in general is that people have kind of got detached from what the basis of art is, and that's just expression. It's expression, and it's for the expressor first. And I think that we have such selfless hearts to be like, I want to make the audience feel this. I want to create this opportunity for my students. I want to all of these things, when the real first thing is there was something inside of you that you needed to speak. There was something there first. All of that comes after that. And if we connect with that, we can speak more to our wisdom, to our gnosis, right?
Yeah.
And give what only we can give. But a lot of the times we're focused on giving what somebody else has already given, but in our words, which has merit. But I think there's something deeper we can have. And it's just like,
wow,
it can be tricky, and not to poo-poo anything that anyone's doing, but I think that there's just more opportunities to step in and not have to be like, look at those confident improvers up there that are doing the thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I could do that too. And they wanted to share something through improv comedy or improvised plays, improvised musicals, all of that stuff. Because improv can be in anything, just so happens that you can do it as a performance style thing too.
Right. Yeah. So what does improv for wellness look like? So let's
Yeah.
say I contacted you and wanted to come on as a client, or so what does that look like? Is it group sessions, individualized? Like what are you?
It can vary, right? So I'll most of the time I'll just work with anybody that wants to work with me,
Cool.
right? So you want to do solo one-on-one work? Awesome. I've got to do that with somebody in the past, and we really focused on like how can we find more space for you in your own life, because they were really busy. They had a lot of stuff that they were giving to other people, but they needed that space for themselves back. So let's figure that out.
Right.
I've done schools and high schools and colleges and stuff like that, where sometimes it's performance based. So let's focus a little more on how can you trust yourself wholeheartedly in whatever performance you do, and not worry about impressing your director or impressing everybody in the ensemble, the audience.
Right.
Or the other end of like, beginning improvisers and things like that, and trying to give it in a way of, hey, like we're going to do some improv games and activities and such, and the teacher said we should have a performance at the end, so we'll do that. But let's make sure we give you lessons that are going to be so much more useful to you if you never come back to it after this class is
Gotcha.
done. But a lot of the times, so it'll be groups, all of that kind of stuff. But what it tends to look like for me, particularly in the last year doing everything virtual, was just focusing in on taking some of these traditional improv exercises and making them either taking the performance element out of them. Let's play a game like Yes and, where all you do is someone says something they just say something, right? There's a tree. Next person in line says, yes, there's a tree. Repeat and affirm what the last person said. Then add the word and add something to it.
Okay.
There's a tree. Yes, there's a tree, and there's an apple in the tree. Yes, there's an apple in a tree, and it's on fire,
Okay.
And so that's just like the traditional baseline foundation of improv. What I was interested in is like we always do that game, and we do it to like make people feel the pressure to make people laugh or to tell an interesting story or something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, we're going to play that exact same thing, but we're going to play it by ourselves. And especially in the virtual setting, just mute your mic, play by yourself. Here's the only stipulation. You can only say things that are true. You can only say things that are true.
Okay.
So I am on a podcast. Yes, I'm on a podcast and I'm talking to somebody. Yes, I'm talking to somebody and there's ornaments around the room. Yes, you keep going, keep going, keep going.
Okay.
And then from there, we can start to play with this idea of that your truth is worth exploring. So we start with that kind of stuff, but then the next layer is, cool, we started from that truth. Let's start from the truth of how do you feel right now? Okay? I feel a little jittery. Yes, I feel a little jittery and I can see outside. Yes, I can see out, and just expand that further and further.
Okay.
So that you're exploring your internal state and you're learning you could be having a panic attack and other things are still true. You're not a lesser person for feeling sad. You're not a better person for being the happy person in the room.
Right, yeah.
It's all influences, it's all inspiration, and what we're asking ourselves is to be curious about ourselves in that moment. So it was hard early on for me to gain confidence with my work because I was like, I'm not changing a whole lot of stuff. Like I'm not doing a whole lot of stuff, but it's those little adjustments that make the difference, which I know that and stuff that my mom knows of, like those little adjustments in yoga and practices, even just the breath, right? They change everything about the practice.
Right.
So if we can step into that intentionality, we can have a whole new healing process through it. Or if there's nothing that comes from it, you gave yourself time to be curious about yourself for a little bit.
There you go.
Right?
There you go.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to tell people right now that kind of catches people off guard is that you are your own healer.
Yeah.
You are it. I'm holding space for the healing to happen as a Reiki practitioner, sound healing practitioner, but I'm not doing any kind of magic spells or anything that your body isn't doing. You're doing all the work. I'm just giving you some modalities to work with. And so I think it's kind of hard for people to understand that because I'm physically still doing something to them, whether
Right.
playing bowls or have my hands on them in some kind of way. But with this improv for wellness, like you are really teaching them that they are their source.
Yeah.
They are that source of light, that source of happiness, that source of sadness. It's all within them.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate like, taking it external first, what do you see around you, right? Let's get that muscle start working, right?
Yeah.
Let's get some reps in there. And then all of a sudden we start turning it internal. Now that we have the understanding of like, say what you see, get used to the flow state of that. Now we turn it internally. It's like, oh
Hmm.
shit, like there's more honesty that comes from that internalness after you started to get that understanding of what that external feels like.
Yeah.
And, when we can start to draw that in and really create that confidence of self, that knowing that we've gotten shit that we've put ourselves through, whether we've done it to ourselves or we've been a victim of something, right? We've all
Hmm.
got shit we're trying to unpack, but knowing that it's within you to do that and finding the different modalities to help you find that,
Hmm.
and knowing that now there's more modalities outside of just body work and massage and yoga and all these things that we know. Now there's new modalities like improv,
Hmm.
like how do you heal yourself from this amazing free form of art?
Yeah.
Let's figure it out because there's a way to do it. Thank
Yeah.
you for figuring it out, man.
Thank
God
you.
damn,
Thank
that's
you.
so beautiful.
And it's a village, right? Everybody's learning from each other, and I think it just so the funny thing sometimes can be, and I'm curious if you feel this way too, sometimes you're not doing anything new, you're just doing something that no one knew about.
Yes.
It's like, okay, I happen to read these books. I happen to have actor training and some a little bit of a side note, like one of the things I found in the theater world, like doing acting training, like Suzuki, Alexander technique, Linklater voice work, all of these different things, was that everybody in the class would always go like, man, this teaches you to be a better human. This teaches you to be a better human, and like, can't believe everybody doesn't have it. And I would always be like, yeah, you're right. And then no one would do anything with
Yeah.
that idea.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like, oh, well, not everybody's going to want a script in their hand and do that stuff, but improv, you don't need anything. So
Right.
maybe that's a place to put that in. But with everything that we do, with the Reiki, with the improv, with yoga, with everything, I think that you're right that we're our own healers, and all that an instructor doing is inviting you to think the way that we think, or to think the ways that, or to explore the stuff that maybe helped us or that we were curious about, and be like, we'll put the invitation out there. Whatever you do with it is yours, because I like doing it anyways.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like the that concept of gnosis we keep talking about,
Yeah.
coupled with actualization moments, right? Because you have this, that gnosis idea where we start to gather information through our lives, right? And then we find that weird intrinsic way that all that information fits together, right? And that's so unique to the human being, because even though, like, let's say we're the same age, we went to the same school, we sat through the same classes, you're still going to ingest that information different than I am.
Yeah.
You're going to tie yourselves to different concepts in history and math and science, all that shit, differently than I am. And then you're also coupling that with all this beautiful, passionate energy that you're developing, right? And then we find those weird ways that all of that meshes together.
Yeah.
And through that, we have those actualization moments. That actualization, the term self-actualize, there's that term, and I know that it's a term, and I know there's no ill content meant by self-actualization,
Sure.
but the self-actualizing holds it to the self, right? I like actualization moments because when the self actualizes, that's an actualization moment for everybody that is around that person as well. So it's not just them actualizing, that actualization moment goes out to everybody.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful process, because when you can see somebody go through that actualization moment, that is so inspiring to know that that weird information that person holds somehow made it to this point to where now they're helping humanity in a way. They're also they're able to stabilize their income. They're able to survive off of whatever thing that they're making. It's like everything meshes up in this beautiful pattern to make you know gnosis, right? That knowing with a G that you're doing exactly what you need to do. You don't
Yeah.
need to explain it to people. Those people will find you because you are doing something very authentic and passionate. It's just, it all just falls into place.
Yeah, it does fall into place, and it's a, I don't know, it's just a really special thing to be able to step into. And, I know we talk about this downstairs a little bit, but hopefully with everything that's happened, there's been so much pain, there's been so much suffering that's occurred over the last couple of years and all of that. And hopefully there is also things that we can take that either come from I see things a new way, or I'm tired of life being that way, and being able to trust your impulse of something's telling you this doesn't sit right with me, or this thing really sits right with me, and stepping towards that, so that, like I said earlier, that spectrum of human knowledge can kind of expand, because only you have that one thing, that one connection, that one understanding, that even if you say the same words, no one else is going to say it like you.
Right.
And it'll touch somebody that thinks like you and be able to affect everybody. I love that idea of actualization, so that it is one person affects the world. Whether you like it or not, you
Right.
do.
Yes. Yes, you do. There is that ripple effect.
Yeah.
There's that, I think Gandhi used to say back when he was still alive during the British rule, people would, the critics of Gandhi would go to Gandhi and be like, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're just standing there being peaceful. Like, what is that going to accomplish? And Gandhi said, basically paraphrasing, but, if I can only control my peace. Right. And if I dedicate myself to being the most peaceful person that I can around anybody that I encounter, no matter what they throw at me, then I want to see what that ripple effect feels like, because all I can control is me. And then people can be influenced by that. Right. And that influence, you can't control the influence. You can just control what you're doing. And that influence sometimes is a bigger spread than we could ever even imagine. The amount of peace that somebody holds, the amount of stoicism that somebody holds, the amount of vulnerability, right? Seeing somebody openly cry,
Yeah.
right? That, for me, that makes me just want to cry thinking about it, because of how many times I didn't cry when I needed to.
Yeah.
Right. So we have those people that hold that space, that are those examples for us, even in, I love this guy. His name's Simon Sinek.
Okay.
He's an author. He's a big, does a lot of speeches on business management, team management, actualization, stuff like that. And there's a thing that he says, if you go into a bookstore, any bookstore, there's tons of books and tons of sections on self-improvement.
Right.
Self-improve. How do you improve the self? Which is great, right? You start with the self.
Yeah.
But how do we improve the group? Where's the group mentality improvement, right? Where's the group actualization moments, right?
Yeah.
And that's, when I started hearing him talk, that's when I started to shift my thinking about that self-actualization to the actualization just in general. Yeah. Because the self holds it to the self, but when you just take that word away and let it be an actualization moment, that ripple effect almost gives permission for others to actualize too. And then you have that group actualization moment of that intrinsic overarching knowledge of everybody finding their beautiful gifts and finding the way that they match together.
Yeah.
And so I just love that whole like group mentality.
Yeah.
And so improv, right? That's, a lot of it is individual, sometimes, but
Yeah.
it is that, you don't know what that other person's going to say. And you're working with a group. What are they going to say? Oh shit, they just said something. I have no idea what that word is, but
Right.
we're going to run with it and play, right?
Exactly.
Let's do it.
And like you're saying, basically taking the limits off of how we think. We are so surprised by how many limits there actually are that we place on our heads. One of the things I would like to do with groups when we were in person was we'd play red light, green light.
Okay.
And I would go like, when I say green light, you move. When I say red light, you stop. And you just get to the other side. So we'd play red light, green light, da 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 da, and people would get out, right? And the thing that always happens for everybody is red light, they move. Ah, dang it. They just and it's like still fun,
Yeah.
right? There's joy. They go back to the beginning and they keep going. And what I would do is we'd play the game, and then we'd do a couple rounds, and what would happen is no one would replace me out of it. I'd be like, okay, everybody to the other side, everybody to the other side, everybody to the other side. And I would then invite this limit to be taken off of like, hey, do you notice that when somebody gets out in the group, they get upset, they get frustrated, they get a little bit like, I messed up. Do you need that? Does that serve you? Because all that happens is that you keep playing the game. You just keep playing the game. You don't replace me. There's nothing shifts.
Yeah.
So can we invite that anytime someone gets out to be this big, exciting moment, this unexpected thing that occurred?
Yeah.
And so then we'd play in a way of like, all right, when somebody gets out, everybody cheers. Everybody cheers with everything that they have.
Yeah.
And it just changes the game. Now people want to mess up. Now people want to get out. But it's just a little limit that we got when we were a kid, that when you get out in this game, it's not what's supposed to happen. So you have to kind of be a little upset about it because you're playing. And it's that times a million for so many aspects of our life of like, oh, I'm allowed to think this way, which I think a lot of, reading, experiencing classes and instructors and all of that stuff starts to basically do that. Hey, you can think this way.
Yeah. And it takes it from being a finite game of like, oh, you've broken the rules, or you've, whatever, you're done, you're out, go sit over there and be somber.
Yeah.
To this infinite game of like, everybody wins, even though you are technically out. Everybody just cheered you on. You're going to go stand on the sidelines and cheer on everybody else now, and you're continuing the game on.
Yeah.
And so I think in mentality in general, like I love game theory mentality of like right now we're in a finite game in the world where, in theory, like if I win, then somebody else has to lose, right? Because nobody, like let's take Jeff Bezos, for example. He has $3.5 trillion. So that's holding a lot of money that not a lot of people can have, right? So he's winning.
Yeah, you won.
But a lot of people are losing because they don't have access to that money, to gain that money in some kind of way, right? But when we change the rules of the game, yes, success is a definition in the dictionary, right? But if you apply success to the individual, it's very individualistically defined.
Yep.
Happiness, success, sorrow, those are all defined by the human being. So if we take that moment to take and understand what success is to us, and we can define that in a universally way to branch out so that everybody has a variation of success, then we continue the game on, right? It's an ongoing game. It's infinite. It's not I win because you lose, right? How do we all win? How do we all take a little bit of the pie forward so that we can all be happy in this newfound way that we've discovered happiness? Maybe it's not monetized happiness. Maybe it's this sense of being of happiness, but we're in charge of the rules. We're in charge of the game. We're choosing to play this finite game because that's what's been presented to us.
Yeah.
But the more that we start to change that mentality and find the ways to make it infinite, cheer the losers, quote unquote losers, on for playing the best that they could, and then now they can enjoy the entertainment of the game in general instead of having to play in it. So they're still engaging in their own way. They're encouraging their teammates and maybe even the counter teammates.
Yeah.
Dude. Beautiful process.
Yeah.
Keep that shit moving.
Thank you. It is just about continuing the game and just finding the ways to enjoy ourselves, to find our inner peace, right? Like I love that with what you said about Gandhi, where can you, and this is what I try to invite in my practice, is like, can you focus on caring about yourself because it's going to affect everyone around you? And especially with like performance-based improv, the idea that there's no such thing as a star, there shouldn't be. If you see somebody that stands out in improv, chances are that they're kind of the selfish one. It's like they're the ones that are wanting the attention. They're the ones that are wanting to make everybody laugh. But if you pay attention and see that everyone's trying to make everyone else shine, and at the same time saying, I'm going to follow you, and I will also allow myself to be followed, then you marry that beautiful thing of like, everybody shines, everybody's doing a great job, and there will definitely be people that take attention at times and that do become the stars because the story or whatever is being told on stage dictates somebody has to.
Gotcha. Yep.
But you can tell that everyone's setting each other up. And that's like magic to watch when you're just like, oh my gosh, like that big laugh in the audience occurred, but that's only because the other person there said this thing 5 seconds ago because they knew the other person would run on and play with that idea.
Totally.
And,
It needed the setup.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, and there's, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. It'll come back to me in a minute.
It happens.
But yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. And improv, it probably happens all the damn time.
Right.
You're like, oh shit, where is it at? Come on back.
Okay, whatever. This is what's happening now.
This is real life now.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned something about pandemic and just a little while ago, and we had a good discussion downstairs. Was this so improv for wellness or any of the improv work you're doing now? Was this a product of the pandemic kind of slowdown, or that kind of reshifting of focus that a lot of people had during that time?
Yeah, it's kind of both, because I was doing it before the pandemic. I came back to Washington in 2018 for my graduate program, and I started doing the teaching there, and I was going around to different places getting to teach stuff, and I was implementing some of the ideas that I hold now, right? I was still fleshing them out, still playing, asking like my old college to be like, can I host a free workshop? Just want to play with ideas, and would just see what would work and what didn't. And there was a lot of stuff that I loved that I was doing pre-pandemic, in person, and just like getting people to play, getting people to feel safe, still kind of more performance based, because I felt this pressure to be like, well, theater programs and students are always looking for some sort of performance aspect to improv, or even just like corporate workshops or something like that. Yep. There's always this sense of like, yeah, but can we play, like, let's play Bus Stop, let's play Story Die, like, can we get that in there?
Yeah.
And I'm exaggerating, but it's becomes more about the experience of doing playtime than taking something that you'll have afterwards.
Gotcha.
And what I found during the pandemic is that I got to do everything virtually. And at first I was like, I'm not going to teach any of this shit virtually. Like, there's no way. But I had I have some friends that run a theater company called Filament Collab that would do workshops every month. They were free workshops, and I taught for them in the past, and they wanted me to do a virtual version of my stuff. So I adapted my workshop to be way more focused on the healing, wellness, self-development part, because I was like, we can't do performance stuff, or we can't do it in a way that I'm interested in.
Right. Okay.
And so it became more things of like adapting some, again, I was really influenced by Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, and she has the practice of morning pages, where you do, right when you wake up or relatively soon, do 3 pages of stream of consciousness writing.
Okay.
Just
unedited,
just do it, just go out there and give yourself that space.
Cool.
And I've been doing that for a year and a half now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's a life-changing practice for me. And what I wanted to do was, like, I'm not going to have people write for 30 minutes or something like that. But what if we start the class by first doing introductions and such in a way that's like, hey, name, pronouns, all this stuff, and asking a question that sets us up for the day. That isn't just like, be extremely vulnerable for us. It would be something of like, say your name, your pronouns, and the question that I have for you, if you choose to answer it, is when's the last time your emotions served you? Just something of like, you're not asked that question, so it gives you time to think and try to build some air of like, hey, if this takes the next 2 hours, then it takes the next 2 hours. Don't not share what you want to share. So we'd start with something like that, and then we'd go into the morning pages kind of exercise that I adapt to be like 15 minutes of writing, and we'll go 5 minutes on some guided questions that you can start with, go wherever you want with it. So I'd ask a question of like, what does your ideal life look like? What is keeping you from it? What's encouraging you towards it?
Okay.
And so let's just explore that for the next 15
Yeah.
minutes. And then, we'll talk and we'll share and we'll learn from each other for as long as we want to talk about it. And then go into the yes and exercise, and
Okay.
then go into other stuff that only just builds on all of that foundation. So really trying to your original question, that's when I started realizing like I need to double down on what I was doing,
Okay.
rather than try to focus on making people happy by focusing on performance and making sure they get the skills that people expect from
Okay.
improv.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes those forced pivots like make us explore things that we may have been apprehensive for in the beginning, or maybe even didn't even know that that was a route that we wanted to take
Yeah.
until like, okay, shit, I got no choice. I'm bored as hell. Let's figure this out. you know?
Yeah.
And that forced development of ideas sometimes. Like for myself, I'm a list keeper. I've got Google Keep list on my phone that I've had. God, I've got so many lists on that phone, and I had a list on there that was things I don't have time for, and I've been just shoveling stuff on that list for years, probably 10 years now, and so yeah, when the pandemic hit for us, that was once I found out that I realized I was going to be safe, my family was going to be safe, we were taking the precautions, all the things that we needed to do to have our financial and our safety in there.
Yeah.
That now gave me that time to explore those things and to sometimes just step into that discomfort that I might have because I don't quote unquote have the skills. I haven't learned the skill set yet or have the systems in place. But now, I'm kind of I'm a pretty driven person. Like I love my downtime. Don't get me wrong, but like I can't live there. I got to earn that downtime in my own head. Even though I know I don't need to earn it, but
Totally.
but that list wasn't going away, and it just kept saying, hey, where your list is, what you need to do. And so giving that opportunity to dial in and have some of those forced pivots of figure this out. You're scared of this. Why are you scared of it? Okay, let's figure that out. Where is that fear coming from? Dial that down. Okay, cool. Now you're afraid of your own ignorance. So learn about it and get in there and do it. Now I got a YouTube channel. I got 2 podcasts, got all these things that I used to be afraid of, whether I didn't have the time, afraid of not having the time or afraid of the knowledge base. Now there's so much confidence that's built in my own person from that exploration of self and of those things that I was at one point scared of. Now, yeah, I still have fears. I'm still scared. Like, sitting down to this conversation today. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous. Never met you before, but I think having nerves when you step into something shows that you care about the outcome of that thing.
Yep.
Right. And if you always just walk in brushing, shit off your shoulders, like, got this, get out of my way, about the interview down with Teague, blah, 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 good stuff. It's like, no, you don't care about that. Own up to that.
Yeah.
Embrace those emotions, embrace those nerves, right? It's like when in our yoga classes right now, one of my biggest things for people, because a lot of folks want to get back to the practice they once had and not taking the steps to build that practice back. Right. One of my biggest points of reference right now for people is listen to your fatigue. Right? Listen to what your fatigue is telling you, right? Sometimes it tells you, you got this, you can keep going. Sometimes it's like, dude, get in a child's pose and breathe. Leave the pose alone, right? Yeah. But listen to what that impulse is telling you. Listen to what that thing is telling you. Listen to your body, because your body is smart as shit.
Yeah.
Right? We need to pay attention to that stuff. So listen to what it's telling you.
Yeah, listen to what it's telling you and trust it. And, it so much of the time we've adopted as a culture like this idea, the fake it till you make it, or there's a right mood and feeling to do things and all of that, but there isn't. There's you. Yeah. And the body is so smart and gives you so much information, and sometimes we just don't know how to interpret it. Like one of the workshops I like to give was called the language of emotions. And it would just be focused on like, hey, how does anger serve us? How does fear serve us? How do these things teach us something? Can when we feel anxious, can it be a sign of something to learn and something to be like, hey, I feel anxious right now, and it's because I care about this thing, or it's because this actually doesn't feel in line with my truth. Let's take some time to reflect on that, and then, okay, it is just nerves. I do care about it. Or, oh no, that was right. Like, I don't have to hate myself for being sad, for being angry, because it's just the body going like, hey, this is what is going on, and I don't have words, so I will give you this so that you can take the time to reflect and think about it. But then we live in a culture that's like, ignore it, ignore it.
Exactly.
do whatever you can to get rid of it, when it'll go, not all the time, right? There's clinical depression. There's all sorts of other things that are going on. And there is a chance that at least you'll learn something, even if it's like, oh, I have a chemical imbalance in my brain. That's why this is occurring right now.
Right. Yep, definitely. I think there was a Ram Dass talk I listened to a while back that that he talked about when he, when he stepped into his Ram Dassness, from Richard Albert to Ram Dass, he felt an obligation to fully not embrace, but emulate that idea of him being a holy man, right? And so he basically put aside all of his emotions except for joy and happiness, right? He just, every time people saw him, he was like, I'm Ram Dass. I'm joyous. Look at the aura around me and all this shit.
Yeah.
But then he would go off stage and just be miserable as shit because he couldn't embrace his emotions. He didn't feel he had the authenticity to, because he had to play this role.
Yeah.
And so he found himself starting to become snide and starting to become like very like abrasive to the people that are closest to him, that should see the authentic Ram Dass, right? And so he finally had to come to grips with that and say, I embrace my humanity, my divinity through my humanity, right? Because we're all humans. We all have emotions. We all have happiness. We have sorrow. We have fear. We have all these weird thoughts in our heads that, now, we don't need to pay attention to all of them, but we don't also need to just push them all away. They serve us a purpose.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Rabbi Malachi Finley that he's a Orthodox Jewish man that's a therapist, that one of his mentalities that he likes to think about is when it comes to, let's say, anxiety, for example. Anxiety, we all have anxiety. We all have some form of it. But, the person back in tribal days, right, when we had like 150, 200 people in our tribe, the person with anxiety, that dude was up on the top of the hill looking for people coming up.
Oh,
right?
wow, yeah.
They notice a twig move, a leaf blow in the wind. They're noticing that shit, right? And so they're your lookout because they're completely in tune and in touch with everything that's moving, right?
Yeah.
So that anxiety serves a purpose, right? We just need to find the purpose it serves instead of just trying to live in joy and happiness. It's a great place to stay, but you can't really embrace the full understanding of happiness until you've seen how shitty life can be.
Yeah.
Right? You experience some of that sorrow, you experience some of that hardness of life, and then you see like a child smile or something. It's like, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, because I've just pulled myself out of this treachery. But I had to see that treachery and had to feel that emotion to really experience and embrace this joy and this beautiful moment over here.
Yeah, let the full depth of these things affect you. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing to protect yourself from with these feelings. And can we let it affect us so that in those moments where we do feel sad, we can say, yes, I feel sad. I feel sad. I'm going to let it affect me. And then next hour, next day, next week, whatever your time frame is, when you're ready to step out and be like, what's the next step for me? We can have had that quote unquote grieving process with that feeling.
Yeah.
And then be like, cool, I felt it all. I don't need to, it's not tucked away so that when I'm walking down the street, it's going to come out because I didn't actually deal with it. Yeah. It's just like, I did. And it'll still have traces and it'll still affect me. And you know what? I'm still great because of it. It doesn't have to go away.
Exactly. It adds to your greatness because you've recognized it.
Yeah.
Because you've addressed it. It's not this thing that's sitting there like working in restaurants for as long as I have, used to, one of the things that I love about what you've just said and equating it back to like a real life thing was, let's take like an upset guest, right? A guest that, let's say their steak was overcooked, right? So they call me over and they're like, hey, I ate it. It was all good, but I just want you to know that it just wasn't right. So a lot of times, like, you don't need to really throw a lot of things at a solution to a problem. You just need to address the fact that there is one. Put attention to the fact that, hey, something's messed up.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times, like with Vipassana meditation, for example, you scan the body, and let's say I have a point of interest. I try not to label it as pain or suffering or happiness or joy, but I have a point of interest in my left shoulder. So I bring my thought process to that point of interest, and through just giving it the awareness that it deserves, it starts to surface and dissipate.
Yeah.
Right? Same kind of idea. The guests didn't want anything for free. They just wanted to let me know that things were wrong because they like the restaurant we come to, that we have, and they want us to succeed. So, hey, just let your cooks know they overcooked a little bit. Just be mindful next time, right?
Yeah.
Just an awareness, right?
Just
Same with
awareness.
the body. Just bring awareness to it.
Yeah.
Give it the love that it needs.
Just awareness. Just one of the theater sayings that famous director Anne Bogart says. She says, the attention you give a thing makes the thing, And so if we give attention to something and we say it's one thing, then yeah, that's what it is. If we say it's good, it's good. If we say it's bad, it's bad. It's just whatever we say. And I think that we take things really personally. Again, going back to like the beginning of our conversation of like, we don't all know how to socialize because it's not a muscle that we train. It's not something that we're told like, hey, this is a skill and we're going to go to school and we're going to practice talking to each other.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But to be able to arrive and be like, hey, steak's overcooked and all that, and not take it as like, why are you telling me? Like, what's like, are you really going to complain to me now? Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
And just be like, oh, you cared. Oh, you like this. Oh, you did this with love and respect and you didn't want to do anything mean. It's just, we have to have our attention. Yeah.
Yeah. And, going back to something you just said about, like that back and forth conversation. Let's say it's a spirited discussion, if you will.
Yeah.
Not like, opposing sides, but, spirited discussion. And it could even be opposing sides. But I think, right now we're at a very precarious time to where we capitalize on people's missteps. Right. Yeah. And I, for lack of better phrasing, and I'm trying to find a better phrase for it, but I always want a worthy opponent, a worthy rival, a worthy counterpart of sorts. Right. And so, and I can't remember who I was listening to. It was about a year ago. I was listening to this gentleman talk about this kind of concept. And he was saying, hold the space for the person and help them flush out their idea. When we meet, and this is a proposed idea, right? When we meet proposed ignorance with our aggression, that makes the proposed, again, ignorance dig in harder, right? And so let's say like I'm trying to flush out some idea and I misstep, and then you immediately capitalize on that misstep and don't let me finish my thought process. And then that's that aggression met with my ignorance. Well, goddamn, I'm going to dig into my ignorance. Doesn't even matter what I was ignorant about. It's just digging in now, right? So if we can get to a point to where we can find the space to hold, to flush out the full idea. Again, like we started the conversation, sometimes we attach ourselves to a point of a conversation and not let the full conversation flourish. Yeah. Like your point that you're tying yourself to could, that person making that point could counter their own point through the rest of the talk they're having had you have listened to it.
Yeah.
Right? So I love the idea of, okay, so I'm going to hold the space and I'm going to help my quote unquote worthy rival flush out the full content of their idea. One, so that I know exactly what they're trying to say, so then I can be fully prepared to retort it. Or shit, I might fully hear what you say and be like, man, thank you for actually saying that. I've never heard it that way. I actually kind of do believe in what you're saying and I agree with it.
Yeah.
And now I can shift my way of thinking. But giving that person that full freedom to express their idea gives them the confidence of having that idea expressed. And a lot of times we don't realize how ignorant we sound until we say it fully, authentically out loud. And we're like, fuck, I'm the Nazi.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Absolutely.
I had no idea I was a Nazi.
Absolutely.
Shit. This whole time.
I completely agree with that. I have a friend that they're going to a graduate program for, I believe, therapy of some sort, and he told me about the concept of, there's a concept of straw manning, right, where it's in debates and stuff, someone's taking the weakest version of your argument, right, the point of aggression that comes in, their misstep. And he talked about that there is another side of that that's called steel manning, where you basically go, the other person might give the worst version of their argument, and you will do the work to make it the best version of their argument. Oh. You'll find the ways to be like, oh, so you said it this way, and you kind of mean this, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, make it so your worthy rival or whatever is on their best foot. Because why argue their worst interpretation?
Exactly.
No one gets anything, and I think that you're right. People will kind of find where they don't feel as confident in what they say because so many people are used to being cut off.
Yeah. So
many people are used to, like, I had a professor at Western. His name was Jim Lortz. He was amazing, amazing man. He had this magic power, and there's just actor teachers that have this, where he'd just sit there. And he has Parkinson's, so his movement was just, even though he was so graceful because he only did what he needed to do. Okay. And so he would sit there and he would listen to you, and he would give like 5 or 10 seconds after you said something before he responded. And my God, as a college student, you will feel so incredibly uncomfortable because you're like, I can't tell if you like what I said. Like, I can't tell if you agree with what I said, if you don't like it, if you love me, do you? And it's just like, it becomes such a feeling, but it's just because he gave you space to be like, is that what you want to say?
Wow.
And there's just like, I think that's what I want to say. And me and a lot of my friends, he incredibly kind, but a lot of my friends and I would go like, I can't tell if like he thinks I'm an idiot or not. All because he gave you space, and I think we can do that for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple gentlemen I listen to now, Charles Eisenstein and Dave Schmachtenberger. And both are really good thinkers, right? They're some of the guys that are, thinking about all the changes in life that are happening right now with economics, with COVID, with all the things happening, with, world peace, all these things, all these beautiful questions. These two gentlemen, as well as many other people, are tackling these ideas. But in listening to them talk, read a bunch of their books, and their knowledge is fantastic, and the way they approach the ideas is beautiful. But listening to them talk, it's so very similar to what you said. Like, I remember the first couple podcasts I listened to with Daniel Schmachtenberger. And the podcast host would have this diatribe, ask him a question, and then literally it would be like a 5-10 second pause to where I'd like look at my phone to see if I lost connection or something. I'm like, no, and then he would say, you would hear him breathe, and then he would go into his answer. And that amount of space was so uncomfortable at first because it's like, oh shit, like, did he catch him off guard? Is my phone dead? Like, all these things going through my head. But he was, holding the space to make sure that the question was asked, but then giving himself the space to make sure that he answered that question as methodically and as authentic to what he wanted to say as he could. Yeah. And that amount of space, it's really given me a lot to think about, because so many times in conversation, we think that we just got to hit it right away. Somebody asks a question, we got to answer it. Maybe if we don't even know it, the body's, says, or like these triggers to help our brain catch up to what our mouth wants to say. Yeah. But if we can have that space and hold the space for maybe the other person to take that 10 seconds or that time needed to really formulate and think about the depth of the question asked, if it's needed, that's I love that. Let's give them that space. Let's give them the time. Let's give them the thought process to not just not have everything be improv, right? Yeah. Not everything has to be that thing that we love. Things can be taking time. Things can have the space that's held,
Yeah, really giving yourself permission to
yes.
Just relax for a second, take it in, and again, it's like what they try to teach in theater and all that stuff, but it's something that needs to come out to the rest of life. Like, hey, you also don't have to know. You don't have to know. You can be wrong. And like even with this this conversation we're having of like the worthy opponent and all of that, right? Coming to a place of I'm going into this and I hope someone changes my mind on something. I hope there's something new that happens. It's like we're ready to not lose, and that's where we already kind of fail if we're talking about something. There are things to talk about where it's like this is a non-negotiable, man. Like people deserve these rights. And I have to convince you of that.
Right.
But where are the conversations and such where it's like I'm just here to listen, just here to learn, just here to figure it out, and I'll say what I know. It's, what is the phrase? A mentor of mine would always talk about allow yourself to be new.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the beginner's mind.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean don't claim what you know. Just don't claim what you don't know.
Right.
Let yourself be there. Let yourself learn.
And I think especially I learned this lesson a lot with my kids, and it has definitely carried over to my life outside of my kids. But when you can say with earnest and honesty that you don't know, but let's find out together. You take yourself from maybe this with my kids, for example, right? So my kids, just by innately, my kids, one, think I'm an idiot, but also think I know everything, right? So there's that dichotomy there.
The full tarot deck.
Totally, right? Exactly. So when my kids ask me something, like if I don't know the answer, to tell them I don't know, and then to help them find the resource to find that answer. One, I'm knocking myself down to a level that I should be at in the first place, which is at their level. We're all in the same, right? But then now we're this person that they've pedestalized, right? I've been on a pedestal. Now I'm down to their level, and I'm also helping them find the answer that we can both benefit from, right? And so I think a lot of that, being a former boss of restaurants and things like that, teams, I would be looked at for answers all the time. And at the beginning, like I'm a good bullshitter too. So I can find an answer that might seem right and then double check to make sure I'm right later. But the power I found was admitting my ignorance and then taking that person along with me to find out what the fuel is to correct that ignorance.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful like space to be in to like just normalize everybody.
Yeah, it's an expansive process for sure, and I completely hear you on the bullshitting, right?
Yeah.
Because I have the improv background, I feel like I let people down if I don't yes and them in some way.
Okay.
So it'll just be like, yeah, I have no idea what you said, but it's going to take way longer for you to explain to me. So I'd rather just say, yeah, have I listened to a lot of Willie Nelson? No, but sure, like just keep talking. Just keep talking because I want to hear the thing. But it doesn't allow the expansiveness to occur in those moments.
Right, exactly, man.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, man? What's going on with the rest of your the life, the expansiveness of the knowledge that you have, and these cool like things that you're developing?
Yeah. It's right now. It's just trying to step into your own power is what I feel right now. My partner and we just took a trip to Chicago, and some stuff that we talked about was just like being able to cross the threshold out of Washington and then cross the threshold back into Washington and be like, what do we need to step into that's going to be so much easier because we're entering again, right? And for me, I know with my Improv for Wellness practice, I'm so passionate about it and so excited to do more of it. And I'm at a phase with it where I used to think I got to reach out to this theater, I got to reach out to these people, I got to do all of this so that somebody can let me do my work.
Right.
And I'm at the point where people trust me, where there's enough of a following to be like, I can offer this without anybody. I can do it on my own platform. I can just invite people to workshops and all that. And I got to invite like close friends to some private workshops and stuff, but the obstacle I have is just creating the online platform now,
right,
just to do it there and stop worrying about like, yes, look for people to work with, but I can have bi-monthly drop-in classes and workshops. Like that's what I'm really working towards right now because I have the material, I have the stuff, and now it's just a matter of doing a website. You know,
I feel you.
yeah, it's like I have a website that I did for my production company, Come Up Productions.
Okay.
But we just haven't really done theater performances at all. So there's a whole revamp that needs to go into it. And every time you go in with one picture, it's like, oh, that picture sucks.
Yeah.
That's right. So that won't work with that background. So why start anything else? Why do the website? Just look for another client. Look for another client.
Yeah.
You can't
I'm
do.
still productive.
Yeah, I'm still
doing
productive.
things.
So that's a long, honest way of going. Like that's my next step for me. It's
Cool.
just bringing this work to people directly, so that it can just be, hey, just come play. Let's make it easy. Let's build a community around this stuff, as well as kind of prepping for theaters kind of opening back up. So there's opportunities if I want to submit plays that I've written or audition for shows and stuff, I can. And also this new relationship to theater where it's like I don't really want to do it just to say I'm an actor anymore.
Right.
I want to do the projects I want to do, which means you start acknowledging, oh, there's a lot of shit I didn't want to do, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Yeah. So it's a lot of stepping into that kind of power, I suppose.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are there specific age groups you work with, or do you work with all ages?
I'll work with all ages. I have not done like below second grade. I've done
So still some smaller children though. That's awesome.
Yeah, still some smaller children, and they were honestly like I did some classes for Village Theater in Everett.
Yeah.
And and I was doing some middle schoolers, and I was doing the 3rd to 5th graders, and I was nervous for the 3rd for 5th graders because it was the first time I ever did it, and it became such a beautiful moment because they're old enough to understand and young enough to not have preconceived notions.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's like a lot of advanced stuff I wanted to do with the middle schoolers actually became very challenging, and a lot of the advanced stuff I wanted to do with the younger ones was so much easier because they just got it. It was like, oh yeah, you yes and like we'll do an exercise, you walk through the door, find something in the space that you make up and play with everything else that everyone else did, and they would just knock it out of the park. They remembered everything in the space. They knew how to yes and each other. I at our showcase, probably one of the funniest things I've ever experienced was doing some scene work and stuff in front of a live audience.
Okay.
And one of the probably like a fourth grade kid just came up for a new scene that had started, and he had the most beautiful start to the scene that I've never expected from a kid that age.
Yeah.
He was just like, Martha, time for the divorce.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, wow, I've never seen a better scene starter. And it came from someone I didn't expect it from. And you get to see, this was 2018 that I did this.
Okay.
But again, getting to see, man, I'm just limiting these students. I am not giving them the opportunity to believe that I think that they could perform professionally right now. Okay. And just be able to give that to them. I don't remember how I got all of that, but it's
that's beautiful, man. That's so cool. My youngest kid is 12, and this is her first year in drama, and she's taking a theater class and wants to go into drama club.
Oh yeah,
and she, I think the epitome of what you just talked about with, she's 12, but she still has that free flowing, like just say yes, right? She's just so out there and just very imaginative and loves making the whole TikToks with her friends and all that stuff like that. And so I just want to find more ways to embrace and to help her with that, so down the road, I might tap you on that.
Please.
Because she's, I'm so just in love with what you're doing, man.
Thank you.
It's such a unique approach to wellness. And I think the more unique we can be, the more ways we can like get out of our own way and start to see other ways that wellness can be approached.
Yeah.
And I think if everything can find its way to be a wellness kind of activity, then we'll always live in that space of being conscious, being mindful, being aware of what's going on around us.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful stuff.
I completely agree with that. This is some of the thoughts that I have sometimes. Is like, if you just, if you want to try something, a new approach to these different things and have it be a wellness version of it, literally just put with wellness after it. And I think it starts to spark that of like running with wellness, okay, building with wellness, walking with wellness. Like, just the invitation is enough for somebody to spark that kind of creativity and that kind of journey. But I think that we're all on it, and we're all making what we can. And I appreciate your kind words. It's exciting to get to talk with other people that are just like healers in their own ways. And it's like, it doesn't matter what the details of it are. The foundations are generally the same. And, you know, getting to experience my mom do yoga for many years and do a lot of classes with her and stuff, you really start to see the difference between like performative yoga and like healing yoga. And
Definitely.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's powerful to experience people like yourself, people like my mom, people all over this yoga community that are trying to give themselves to the practice and help people find themselves within it.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing, but it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate those kind words too. Any parting thoughts? Any final? Where can we find you?
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
Lots. You can find me, you know, Facebook, Instagram, just Teague Parker.
Okay.
You can find my production company, Come Up Productions, on Instagram on that handle and on Facebook as well. LinkedIn, I post stuff there now too.
Very nice. All social media.
Yeah,
You're
all
covering the
social.
gamut.
Yeah. But I post like little 1-minute videos of just like ways that Improv for Wellness come into your life, or just thoughts on. I talk a lot about teaching and stuff because I think everybody can be a teacher, and it can be an art form rather than like a business and a thing that people feel a lot of stress around too.
Right.
But besides that, those are the main places to find me. And as I rebuild my website, comeupproductions.com would be another place to find me.
Nice. And we'll leave show notes, links in the show notes. But I have to say before we end, listen, I love listening to your little blurbs on social media. They're very inspiring. They're just enough of a nugget to chew on, but you don't have to really. It's not like, and I know it's like a minute long doesn't seem like a long time, but 30 seconds is a long time now in our culture, right? So, but those 1 minute long chunks, like it gives you enough to like marinate on, gives you a nice little thing to think about, and it's such a beautiful landing spot. So I don't think you'll stop, but I encourage you to keep going because they're definitely landing.
Thank
they're
you.
Very beautiful, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So thank you, dude. Thanks for being here, and I'd love to have you back on because one of the things we didn't get to talk to that I'd love to talk to you more about that I'm super passionate about is teaching.
Yeah.
And just how we can get into people and find that ways to spark that creativity and that interest through the different ways of teaching.
Yes.
So. I think down the road we'll have you back here.
Please do. I'll talk with you for hours on that.
I know,
That'd be so exciting.
Definitely, I feel like we can just keep this going. It's like it's so many topics we can riff on. So
yeah.
But for now, dude, thank you so much for being here, brother. Yeah. And I hope you the best with all the journeys and the wellness and the improv that you're doing, all the things that you have yet to even discover you're going to do. I wish you the best, and if I can be of any help, just please let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Much love, brother.
Much love.
Thank you so much for spending time with Teague and I. Please like and share the podcast if you like it. Subscribe to the channel and whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Send it out to your friends and family. Just find anybody that might be inspired by the conversation. And thank you again for just being a part of the community. If there's anything that I or T can do, please reach out to us in the show notes. Much love, obeisance. We'll see you next time.